There's a reason why Americans are more polarized than ever. We just haven't been able to pinpoint exactly what it is until now. Partisan tensions are inescapable in the modern era. Today, nearly 2/3 of Americans say that we are more divided as a nation than we've ever been before. This isn't about policy. This is about emotion. This is about hatred. We can't solve polarization until we understand where it's coming from. We have to find out what's causing partisan animosity to grow in this country. We've created the most detailed report on American political polarization that's ever existed. We call it America's Political Pulse. We think of it as an EKG of American democracy. And our research suggests that there's a very clear and singular reason for why partisan animosity is at an all-time high.
This is Stand Together Presents. Stories, ideas, and advice from changemakers tackling our biggest challenges.
When an American turns on their TV or when they go onto social media, they're going to see political conflict. It's not just in the period around a presidential election. It's every day. Here's the thing. The Kardashians set social culture for young girls. LeBron James set social culture for young boys. Our lab, for the first time, has identified that Americans are modeling their political behavior on what they hear from their elected officials. They set the norms for political culture. Let me show you how. At the Polarization Research Lab, we study affective polarization, which is the idea that Americans have a positive connection with their own party and hatred of the opposing party. We found that polling in America concentrates around elections, which gives us huge blind spots in the evolution of American political hatred. So we've built the largest survey ever conducted to try to measure partisan conflict in this country. Each week, we measure the opinion of 1,000 Americans. We judge their willingness to support democratic norm violations, their willingness to support political violence, and the extent to which they hate the other side. When we look at these data, we get some good news, but there's also some bad news. The good news is that an absolute majority of Americans stand behind the principles that this country is based upon. We see that strong majorities of both parties oppose reducing polling stations and will support the decisions of judges and support keeping censorship away from the media. The bad news is that we are very polarized. About 86% of Americans have nothing positive to say about the other side, and up to 1/4 of Americans see the other side as evil or bad. When we're in a world where we're unwilling to talk to the other side, it's impossible to have the kind of critical, policy-focused discourse that is necessary for democracy to function. We're able to identify the connection between the attitudes of elected officials and the attitudes of American citizens because not only do we have survey data, but we're pulling in everything that American elected officials say. We have their press releases, their newsletters, and their social media posts. We analyze what politicians say by using highly customized AI tools. We're interested in, are they talking about policy, talking about the needs of their constituents, or are they engaging in personal attacks? And when we look at that, we can identify a clear pattern. When elites become more negative, citizens become more negative. Take a look at this. Conflict entrepreneurs are individuals who built their personality around creating political division. By focusing on conflict, they have abandoned their duties as representatives. They don't focus on policy, they don't introduce legislation, and our research suggests these messages cause the American public to increase their level of polarization, to increase the extent to which they support political violence. There's a direct cause and effect. What we're witnessing is fundamental human behavior. We're tribal creatures. When we see our side being attacked, we see that as a direct attack to ourselves. In fact, we're so tribal that when we witness attacks against our party, that's when we become most willing to turn our backs on the core principles of democracy and our country. A rational person might ask, why would a politician engage in such negativity? And the answer is that they see it as a way to get attention. They see it as a way to get a national profile. The American public has such a distorted view of their elected officials. You cannot have a responsive democracy if you don't understand what your representatives are saying and doing. The truth is, Americans, they don't read legislation. They don't watch C-SPAN. The only contact that they have with their representatives comes through social media or the news. When the news and social media focus on negativity, that's all Americans see. So they get a false perception that that is everything that's going on in Congress. And that makes it so that the loudest voices are all that are heard. So how do we fix this? You can make emotional evaluations of the world. But when it comes down to it, data is truth. We've created a tool that allows the average American to figure out exactly what their representative is doing and exactly what the representative is saying. If you're a voter, you deserve to know if your representative is working for you or if your representative is working to just build a media profile for themselves. Our goal isn't to say that we don't want disagreement. Disagreement and conflict are inherent in a democratic system. You have to have discussion to get to the best possible policy outcome. Most people know this. Now is the time to make it happen.
Stand Together partners with changemakers tackling our biggest challenges. To see more stories, follow our channels. And to learn more about how you can partner with us, go to standtogether.org.